We are in Matthew 8, verses 28 and following. And as a matter of interest, Pastor Scharf preached on this 2 days ago. So I will accept any questions you may have, questioning anything that I say based on what you learned from your pastor. And I may defer. I thought you were about to whisper to me. You had your hand up like that. And so let's begin here with where we left off rather last time. So when he arrived at the other side, in the region of, as Matthew says, the Gergesenes, and I've got this for you. This is the Sea of Galilee, the northern two-thirds of it about. You see at the top the city of Capernaum. It's there today. Capernaum, by the way, means grave of Nahum. And some people think it's the grave of the prophet Nahum. That's why it got its name. Don't know. It's interesting. And then most of the cities that were probably interesting to people in the time of Jesus were over on the left-hand side. However, we are going to concern ourselves with what's on the right-hand side, especially including those two names, Gadara and Gerasa. Those are two different cities. And so if one gospel writer says it was the region of the Gadarenes, that's the places around Gadara, we might use a phrase like the Mankatos, North Mankato and regular Mankato and outer Mankato and inner Mankato and whatever else. And then somebody else said, well, it's kind of sort of more like Cortland, as opposed to Mankato. And that's what we have here. Gadara was about 10 miles away and Gerasa was about 35 miles away. But that was the general direction, both cities. Make sense? So anyway, we're not going all the way there. But if you take that arrow and you were to take a straight edge or something and put it up on Capernaum and have the arrow go in the same direction, do you see that other diamond? That's kind of the direction that they were going. This is the modern city of El Kursi, or Kursi. Not curse as in the English word, but Kursi. It's just an Arabic name for a city on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. Sea of Galilee is about 5 or 6 miles across at the widest point, maybe 10, north to south, but Kursi is there. And I'm just going to zoom in on Kursi. The main city would be, it's actually not much of a city, but it's kind of at the north end of this. You can kind of see at the very top of the screen, in the middle of the land near the water it looks like kind of a curved parking lot or something way up there. And then this is, I believe, Highway 92. That's the yellow thing that runs north to south. Are you tracking with me there? And by the way, if you take, and then what looks like, what do those look like? Giant tennis courts or something? Those are plowed fields, irrigated plowed fields that are there along the lake and so forth, and some parkland closer to the water. And then if you look at this one spot over here, between highway, I think it's 783 and highway 92 in modern, this would be Palestine, I suppose, is a very, very steep hill. That's what's going on there on that side of the highway, which is why the highway curves there, because there's a big old steep hill. And that evidently is the hill that the pigs would have run down at the end of our story that we're just getting into here. That looks like that's probably it. Now, if the coast was exactly where it is now, I would be stunned, because coastlines change pretty much year to year. And we're talking about 2,000 years ago. So, however, the location of that hill has not changed. So coastline might have been further in, might have been out a little bit. The one other thing that hasn't changed very much is where the whole landscape along the shore goes up toward the top of this isn't a map, it's a satellite picture. There is a point where the water is very deep, and there is jutting out a piece that today is called Diamond Head, which I think is also, isn't it a place in Hawaii or something like that? A famous, I think it's a surfing area, like Diamond Head, and that's what that's also called. Although I think there's less surfing on the Sea of Galilee than there is on Oahu. Anyhow, this is the actual region where this was happening, this side of the lake on the Sea of Galilee. Okay. Or anything there on the actual map. Okay. When he arrived at the other side, in the region of the Gergesenes, 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him there. So in the other, this is in 3 Gospels, this story, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and in the other 2 Gospels, it's just one guy, because only one guy speaks. So the same thing happens when later on Jesus will meet 2, what was Bartimaeus? He was blind, the blind man of Jericho. There are 2 men there, but only one of them speaks. It's the same kind of a thing. So 2 guys, very dangerous. We learn in other Gospels that they also cut themselves. They couldn't be chained. People couldn't get clothes on them. They were naked. Pastor Scharf made a point about that in the sermon this weekend. I think he said that's something you couldn't unsee. Like, you just don't want to deal with that. And very dangerous. Nobody could go that way. So they were scary, scary men, which is why I often call this the scary scene in the Gerasenes. Suddenly, they cried out, "What do we have to do with you, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" I think I would like to take this in reverse order. So what is the time that the demons are scared of? Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think it's Judgment Day. However, had Jesus come to torment these demons as if he's punishing them in hell? No, I don't think he even cares. Their judgment is already done. So what difference does it make? You're going to be judged, and you've been judged. Your punishment is the same. You are separate from God's mercy. That's really the definition of hell. Separate from God's mercy. If you have nothing but the unwinking, wrathful eye of God upon you at all times, that's also suffering the agonies of hell, if there's no mercy there. So that's what these demons have. And here we see, in this one story in the Decapolis, we find out how evil really is. And we find out more than any other place in Scripture how irrational pure evil really is. The devil, and here it's his demons, they have no concept of what would be reasonable, of what would be usual, of what would be typical, and it's the unreasonableness of sin and heresy that is always so destructive. Whenever I talk to the kids at MVL, which is about once a year, Bethany, once a year, out at MVL, at St. Paul's, it's about twice a year or so, and then in catechism, and I try to visit the Sunday school rooms as well. I try to impress on our children that the devil is never your friend. That idea sometimes spooks around in people's heads, that what if in this one case the devil was on my side? Well, is the devil ever going to be doing anything for the benefit of your soul? No. He is. Even if he seems to be doing what you want, shouldn't that be a warning? there should be all kinds of alarms that are and red flags that are jumping up. And if the devil seems to be supporting your cause, maybe you really shouldn't be doing what you're doing. The devil is, and forgive me, he is always a jerk. He is never your friend. He is always your enemy. And what does Peter say in 1 Peter 5:8? Your adversary, the devil, prowls around, roaring, looking for someone to devour. He's not a pet kitty looking for someone to come and stroke his mane, right? Come and put your cheek up against his cheek. Oh, what a nice devil you are. No, not ever, not ever. Sorry, I haven't put that into your head. Get that out of your head again. So, what would be reasonable for demons if they see God? Run the other way. Yeah, leave, get out of here. And what do these idiots do? They meet him. They walk right up to him. How unreasonable is that? How ridiculous is that? We don't have to think that they had a logical motive in mind. They don't. They're dangerous, but they are irrational here. So, where they were, I think I said this last time, I think so, and forgive me if I didn't, but we started this chapter 8, with the account of the centurion with the sick servant. There we had a man in command of legions who was trying to do everything he could for the benefit of one of his servants. Here at the other end of the chapter, we have a legion full of demons who don't care one whit about this poor man that they've inhabited and possessed. And they really don't care what happens to him, and they don't care what happens to anybody else except themselves. Not the man, not the other guy, not the pigs, not Jesus, not the townspeople who own the pigs. They don't care. They're completely self-interested, and their only motive is to wreck everything God has ever done, has ever said. It's not rational. How can you defeat God? Go ahead, Aaron.
How do demons possess people or pigs? Do they need to possess people?
They don't need to. But and remember, we're learning in this text especially how irrational and foolish they can be. Not that the devil isn't also brilliant, and some of his demons really know what they're doing, but they're also irrational and they're unreasonable. And so you have to ask, are they trying to escape the what our dogmaticians call the place of hell by going somewhere else? I'll go hide here for a while. I'd rather do anything else than be in the location of hell. And they get to roam around for a while. So I'll try this guy. And by the way, sometimes by trying this guy or that guy, they also hurt this guy or that guy. And they do want to hurt us. We have that one demon at the foot of the Mount of Transfiguration, I think, where the 9 disciples have been trying to cast out a demon from a boy, and Jesus comes down with Peter, John, and James and asks what they're trying to do. And it was the father says that a demon often throws him into the water or fire trying to kill him. And Jesus says this is a difficult one, and he casts the demon out and so forth. But they want to hurt us. They're not our friends. That could be a motive for possession. And then you've got that other statement of Jesus about when he does cast out a demon. Now be careful, because once that demon has been driven out, he'll go out into the wilderness, out into the desert, into the lonely places, and he'll think to himself, I'd like to go where I was before. It's a nicer place than this. You know, there are fewer places to sit down in the desert, I suppose. And he wants to go back into the person. And what does he do? Jesus says he goes and he finds the man, and he finds the house, he calls him, swept clean and in order and empty. So Christ hasn't come to live there. The Holy Spirit hasn't come to live there. The individual who had a demon cast out has not done anything about his faith. So he let it slip away. And so the demon, finding it empty, goes and gets 7 other demons, Jesus says, worse than him, and brings them all in. And then the guy's condition is worse than it was before. So there's something about possessing a person that's more attractive to a demon than just hanging out, roaming around, I guess. And the pigs, though, where else in the Bible do we hear of a demon possessing an animal? Just the serpent, right? The Garden of Eden. That's basically it. And so is there something about the pigs are terrified. They don't walk around with the demons in them. They just die. They're driven mad and they run down into the water and drown. The whole herd. So it doesn't do anybody any good. That's also part of the irrationalness we're coming to. So, did I answer your question? Okay. Also, the demons, with what they're saying to Christ, what do we have to do with you, Son of God? They're trying to say, we don't have anything against you. You shouldn't have anything against us. Is that true? No, they're already damned. But they're trying to say, hey, can't we just live and let live? Couldn't you leave us alone? Let it be. The demon's request is wicked beyond all reason. In what way? Well, first of all, don't torture us. Well, you're already condemned. Jesus doesn't have to torture them anymore. But then, the idea of leave us alone, of live and let live, what's the other side of that? Don't do to us what you had planned to do, what you judged. What does that leave for us? That leaves, don't redeem those with faith. Leave everything as it is. That's the other side of that request. All those people who have died, just leave them dead. Don't raise up your people. Don't forgive their sins. Don't go to the cross and atone for their sins. Just let it ride. Just live and let live. Let it be. Leave everything as it is. And on top of that, which is kind of the most minor thing of all, but maybe the most immediate in the moment, is there's no thought at all to the 2 men who are possessed. And so the demons here are acting like the king of Sodom, claiming his slaves. Do you remember that story? This is the first Sodom story, where Abraham's nephew Lot is captured in a war with Kedorlaomer and the 5 kings of the north, and they run away with Lot and his daughters and everybody, and they run up north. And Abraham goes and talks to his 3 Hittite friends, and they come together with 3 battalions of warriors, and they chase those northern kings and overtake them way up north of Damascus, and they overrun them, and they win a battle, and they get back all the people and some loot too. They come all the way back down to Salem and are met by Melchizedek, the king of Salem. This is the Melchizedek story. And the king of Sodom comes out and says, hey, nice job. You keep all the loot and give me all the people. I want to have slaves. And remember what Abraham says to him? I'm not going to give you even a single shoelace. Nothing, you get nothing. You haven't helped me. You have no claim over them. And besides, they're not slaves. They're all free. And he lets them all go. But he does give how much to the king of Salem, to Melchizedek? This is the point Jesus makes later on. 1/10. He tithes to the king of Salem. And then in the book of Hebrews, This whole incident is brought out as proof of Christ's high priesthood, because he's a priest, not like the Levitical priests, who don't even exist yet. Abraham and Sarah haven't even given birth to Isaac yet, let alone Jacob or Jacob's son Levi, who will be the first of the priests. And he won't even be the first of the priests. It'll be his descendant, Aaron. So we're still 500 years away from the priesthood. And Abraham, who is the ancestor of the high priest, gives 10%, he tithes, gives a perfect offering to the king of Salem. Salem is the Hebrew word for peace. It's shalom. And that king in the book of Genesis, it has no genealogy. Have you ever accused the book of Genesis of being a little weak on giving genealogies? Nobody has ever accused Genesis of failing to give a genealogy, because Moses can't help it here and there and everywhere. But the king of Salem, Melchizedek, no genealogy at all. And so there's even a word in Greek called without genealogy. It's agenealogos. So he is a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. That's Christ. Christ doesn't have a genealogy going back to the priesthood, but neither did Melchizedek. So he's on that order of priesthood. Anyway, so that's the king of Sodom. Okay. Anything up to here? Let us go into the pigs. We go there next. So I have one animation that one or two of you will get, so I'll just do it right away. So there you go. You guys never played Angry Birds, so don't even worry about it. Just a little bit of nonsense. Anyway, there was a large herd of pigs feeding some distance away from them. The demons begged him, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." And he told them, "Go." He doesn't care. So the demons came out of the men and went into the pigs. Immediately the whole herd of pigs rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the water. So Matthew has left out a whole bunch of details of the text. The whole conversation about how many, who are you? My name is Legion, or our name is Legion. That isn't in Matthew's account, but it's there in Mark and Luke. But the request to go into the pigs is irrational. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change the outcome of the story one bit. All it does is hurt the pigs. And then the pigs are dead. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change the status of the demons. You're stuck here. Now what are you? You're stuck now you're in the pigs, but the pigs are dead. Now you're exactly where you hoped not to be, cast back into hell. You're in the abyss. Well, that's what you asked not to have happen, but that's what's happened now. So Jesus, that whole word in verse 32, he told them go, is, you dummies. Yeah, go ahead. Whatever you want, go ahead. Because the pigs are going to be driven mad. They're going to run down the hill. They're going to be drowned into the sea, and you'll still be in the same torment forever and ever. And that's exactly what happens. The pigs go mad with terror and fear. They rush down the hill. After all, what are pigs? Part of God's creation. God loves his creation. What else, though, about pigs? What's odd about finding pigs here? They're unclean animals. And we're on the border of Israel. And the question is, who owned them? What's going on here? So what about the loss of the pigs to their owners? Who got hurt here financially and why? And what would have been the outcome? But here we have the sinful owners, whether they were Gentiles, which is possible, or Jews, which is probably more likely. Their reaction is not rational, and it is not what probably should have happened. Based on Jesus' actions being completely, perfectly fine with killing the pigs, we often take the owners to have been Jews because it would mean that they've just been caught in a violation of the law of Moses. You're not supposed to have pigs, you know. It's that kind of a thing. So I'm just going to kill the pigs. Or I'm going to let the devil kill the pigs. By the way, that complicity of the will of God doesn't mean that God is responsible for those things that happen. If God has created lead and saltpeter and whatever other things go into the making of gunpowder and so forth, and has been in on the, he's smiled on mankind, creating things like springs and so forth, and then the murderer puts a bullet into the gun barrel and pulls the trigger. God, in his creation and in his providence, is somewhat complicit with the creation of that bullet and that weapon, correct? And the natural forces that are at work when that gunpowder explodes and the bullet is driven forward and enters the body of the man who's murdered. But is God responsible for the murder? No. But that's not the will of God, but it is. But obviously God is involved because of his providence in some way. Some people don't get that, and they think that God's responsible for everything. That every time somebody sins, God must have said, yes, I want that to happen. That's not true. God is never the author of sin. And so here what happens, who's responsible for the death of the pigs? Who actually killed them? The demons killed them. Yeah, to hurt and harm God's creation, to ruin God's creation. The devil is never your friend. Mr. Spike.
It reminds me of another story. I'm afraid that I'm going to mix all this story. Was it Paul in Ephesus? Was it a silversmith or something?
Where the girl was...
Was a demon possessed? Am I getting...
She had the Pythia. That's exactly right. Yeah, she was possessed by a demon, could tell the future.
When the demon was cast out, the people who were in charge of that girl were angry because they lost an income.
Furious, yeah.
I find it interesting that in this story, at least in my reading, I don't recall there being any anger about, hey, you just killed all of our pigs.
What they're going to do is beg him to leave.
Right.
Please go away. Yeah, I want to look at what they did and didn't do. And let's just move into that, okay? So, yeah, the loss of the pigs as they rush down the hill and are killed is a chastisement to potentially, if they were Jews, to give them the option to repent, right? So what actually happens is the pigs' owners aren't there. But the swineherds are there. They run back. They fled and went back to the town, which is a little bit north, I think, of where we were. They reported everything, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And there's a curiosity. They went and said, the pigs are dead, right? But more importantly, the demon-possessed guy is okay now. So maybe not everybody would have said that, but these servants at least include in what had happened to the demon-possessed men. By the way, that maniac, naked bleeding pig guy up in the cemetery, he's okay now. And the entire town comes out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, Matthew condenses the story considerably. They beg him to leave their region. Go ahead, Herb. Demons can't, no spirit can be destroyed. Yeah, the demons weren't destroyed. They just went elsewhere. Yeah. Which, by the way, for you and me, that should be a comfort. No matter how long my soul is in heaven waiting for my body, and no matter what happens to the dust of my body after the, thousands? Tens of thousands of years of me lying in the dirt. And then somebody picks up that little dirt with a scoop one day and adds, I don't know, some chemical to it, and my remains become some child's plastic toy, or worse yet, a styrofoam cup. Ugh, that some foul-mouthed man just spits his chew into during a baseball game and swears into. Is that what I want to have happen to my remains? It doesn't matter what happens to my remains. My soul is infinite, or rather immortal. And so when the resurrection finally comes, sorry about the illustration, but when the resurrection finally comes and my body is remade, my spirit will be the same one that was created when my parents conceived me, and will re-enter my body, and it will be me once again, and I will be eternal then, without end. So my spirit can't be destroyed. No matter what the devil does to me, my spirit can't be destroyed. And yes, the angels can't be destroyed. The demons and the devil can't be destroyed either. You can't destroy a spirit. Yeah. So, 3 things. First one, if these were Jews caught in the sin of raising pigs next to the Sea of Galilee, then the only reasonable response to Christ putting an end to their business was that they should have fallen to his feet and begged forgiveness, to ask him to stay with them and to guide them. If they were and that's not what they do. If they were Gentiles, the only reasonable response was that they should have begged Jesus to stay with them, to teach them to be their Savior, and to help them in every need. And that's not what they do either. Why? Because as I said, this story, more than any other in the Bible, shows us how evil truly is, and how irrational and impractical and unreasonable the sinful mind is, no matter what. Those things that I described, asking Jesus to stay, whether because we're Jews or Gentiles, that would have been good and rational, but it's not what happened. So contrary to all logic and reason, the people behave irrationally and beg Jesus to leave. Please, their reaction is, go away. Well, if they were Jews, why would they want him to leave? So we can start up our sin again, right? And if they were Gentiles, we just want nothing to do with you at all. Just go. Now, Matthew ends the story here. Mark and Luke do not. Because as Jesus is going to step back into the boat again, do you remember? What does the man who had been possessed, what does he ask? Let me go with you. Which is wonderful. That's amazing that the guy wants to do that. And usually up to this point in Jesus' ministry, the Lord would have said, no, whatever you do, don't tell people. This time he says no, but what does he say? He says, go tell people. And the man does. He goes and he tells people what, and this, I think these are Mark's words, what God had done for him. The man understood. And he goes and begins to preach, and at least tell his relatives and so forth, over in the Decapolis, these 10 cities that go from, if that's the Sea of Galilee, they go from the border down into the area over on that other side of the Jordan River. Now, maybe 8 months later or so, or 6 months later, Jesus is back over here. Jesus later on is on his last trip down to Jerusalem, and he crosses the Jordan through the region. It's the lower part of the Decapolis called Perea. And over there, he's met by, pardon the arm map, but that's what he's met by people who recognize him, who already have faith in him. How'd they find out about Jesus across the river? There aren't all kinds of bridges across the Jordan. Well, I think part of it was the preaching of this man. So this guy shares what happened to him and what God had done for him. It's a wonderful, wonderful account, but a striking, amazing story. Anything there on the pigs and the demons and the cemetery at the Gerasenes? Didn't Pastor Scharf do a wonderful job with this on Sunday? Yeah. You've been listening to Invisible Church, the Bible study podcast from St. Paul's Lutheran Church, New Ulm, Minnesota.